Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another video. It's been a minute, hasn't it? This man alongside me, Mr. Ahsan Naeem from the 9320 podcast. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing? You good?
Morning, Steve. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm well, mate. I'm well. My 2-year wedding anniversary today, by the way. I've just realised I forgot to mention. And I'm doing content on my wedding anniversary. We're doing nothing, by the way.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're doing absolutely nothing. I think we're going to an aquarium later, actually, so I'm looking forward to that. Just so watch the baby go, ooh, a fish. But I like aquariums anyway, so I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. I got a bit of sleep, so I'm looking forward to talking as well, City, because I feel like, for many reasons, both positive and maybe negative, which way you want to spin it, there's a lot going on in the world of Man City right now. Like, there's a lot of narrative around this club, and
I was just about to use that word. A lot of narrative.
The narrative is big right now. So I can't wait to dive into a whole bunch of topics. Josh in the chat said, "Ahsan, my fellow sneakerhead." You got a compadre there as well in the chat, guys. I would say, don't forget, please do give this video a like. It does help support the channel. Of course, if you aren't familiar, Ahsan is from the wonderful 9320 podcast. I would say 9320 podcast is the podcast with a bit of edge to it, in a good way, in terms of it's very real, it's very honest, passionate, lifelong Manchester City fans over there. So go and give it a check out, 9320.com. You see the link in the description, you see it on screen there as well. So go and give it check out. It's a wonderful podcast. People like, obviously, Stefan's been all over the media recently, and he's obviously a mainstay on there with Ahsan and Lloyd and loads more people, and Howard, of course, as well. So go and give it a check out. Anything to say about 9320, Ahsan?
No, you did a great advert there, mate. I don't need to say anything else.
There we go.
Marketing is definitely not my forte.
Yeah, well, the content speaks for itself. There we go. So go and check it out, guys. So
Cheers.
today, I think we've got, obviously there's a bit of breaking news about Doku, but we'll go past that for a little bit, because I think it's important to touch on the start of the season first, because it sort of implies the context. Where do we start? There's so many points to start. Let's start with the early season form, actually, because I feel like that's, it's relatively fresh. It's only Monday. We've just come off the back of the Newcastle game, of course, as well, the Super Cup win. We've not chatted since the treble, and of course the Burnley game. How are you feeling about City's start to the season?
I mean, I thought pre-season was good. I felt like it was the best we've looked coming into a season for a few years. I kind of feel like we were massively undercooked last year, maybe undercut the year before as well. This year, it feels like I thought we were good in the Charity Shield. I thought we were better than we've been in the last couple of Charity Shields. And I thought the Burnley performance was impressive. I thought Newcastle was wow. I just think it was a big performance. But then also, I have to say that, weirdly, coming off the back of the Super Cup last Wednesday, I felt like a lot of people went into the weekend going, we won't beat Newcastle, and I kind of looked at it like the Etihad has really become a fortress. Like, I don't really, for me, we slapped Bayern Munich and Real Madrid 4 months ago at the Etihad. So granted, we've lost some players, we've got some injuries, but I just think from a collective point of view, I went into that game fairly confident that we'd win. But actually, what was more impressive than the win was the control in the performance. I mean, I don't think Newcastle had, other than the Gvardiol 3-on-1 thing where he just managed to get the ball off Callum Wilson, I don't think they had a chance, really. So, I
that's
don't
wild, isn't it, by the way? That's wild to say that.
You can't ask for much more than that. But I think there's also a little bit of a wider point, which is that I think a little bit, if you begin to look at the numbers of away from home against the top 10, right? So, for example, this stat's been doing the rounds all summer. And when I first heard it, I was surprised by it. Really caught me by surprise. City only won away from home against the top 10 twice last season, which, if you think about it, for what we expect, that feels like a really low number. Now,
what we achieved as well last year, it doesn't even feel. It doesn't feel like they mixed together those two ideas, do they?
No. Granted, 2 of those games came sort of after the title was won. So I think when we went to Brentford, the title was already won, and when we went to Brighton, there really wasn't a lot riding on it, right? But still, I think it shows that away from home against the top half, everything's going to be a battle. But it also, I think, shows, if you push that forward to this season, I think it shows our route to 100 points. And the reason I use 100 points is because I've genuinely come into this season going, I think that should be the target this year. I don't think we'll get worse at home. I expect us to be, almost perfect at home. And what we actually need to do is we need to improve massively away from home against the top 10. But then there's some weirdness and some fuckery in some of the results that happened last season. If you think about Old Trafford and the kind of the madness of the officiating there. So I do think we can improve away from home against the top 10. And I think that'll be the route to the 4 titles on the bounce, which is a bigger carrot than it's the biggest carrot we've had for a few years from a Premier League point of view. Because the 3 on the bounce had been done before. So you're basically aiming to catch a title or a record that somebody else has already got.
Yeah.
Now that we've got it, that 4 in a row should be a lot bigger.
Yeah, I agree. It's there's something different between matching and exceeding, isn't there? In terms of a record, and City exceeding and being out there on their own. That's a bigger motivator than I think we probably even give it credit for. Because I'm guilty of this as well. A lot of the talk's been around like, can we go again? But there's a new target in front of us, isn't there? Like a massive target. Like this is. There's a very obvious, motivator there. It's not like we haven't got a reason to go again. It's not like because I've been guilty of feeling, we sort of completed football, but actually, no, we haven't 4 in a row. I bet you, I guarantee you, we never made it publicly. I bet Pep's even staring down that Invincibles. I bet he is. I bet he's looking at our defense and going, you never know. What I'm not going to try and jinx us, but there's much more for this team to achieve. Is what I'm trying to get at. Basically, it's a lot more. And when you look at the way that it started, look, I'm going to be honest. I was one of those was thinking. Newcastle early on, they flew out the blocks. I didn't think we'd lose, but I was saying it could be a more difficult game than we let on with the injuries. That was the context. It was with the injuries and so on, people out. But I was absolutely amazed by that Newcastle performance as well. Not amazed because we could do it, more just amazed by how good these players are. More just like, I know they can do it, but as Pep said afterwards in his press conference, like, wow, just like he said, I am so impressed with these guys. And like, it is remarkable. Like the mentality that this team has got, like City are the mentality monsters. No one else are. City are those mentality monsters, and to go again and be that defensive and that stoic against a team, Newcastle looked shell shocked by just how good we were. Like the Geordies were in my chat, like of the previous week. I think they were expecting to see Newcastle be much better. We had them right there, man. We had the palm of our hand, and I think we had another gear to go.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me that surprised me going into the game was there was a lot of chat around Newcastle's midfield, and I was sort of going, well, I think Rodri's probably the best midfielder in the world right now, and I think that Kovacic's adaptation to City has been probably the fastest of any player
ever
in the Guardiola era, with the exception maybe of Haaland, because Haaland's job was to score goals and he just came in and went bang. But I just think that those two were always going to be a match for Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. I don't know how to pronounce
Bruno G, man. Bruno G.
Bruno G. We'll go with that. So it just, I think I went into the game on Saturday quite bullish because I was a little bit reacting to the negativity around City, where I was just a little bit like, I don't think our players are being given enough credit. And also, like, a lot of people taking the performance in the Super Cup on a Wednesday night, 40 degrees in Greece.
Yeah, that was nonsense.
It was just like, it's like if you're gonna get yourself wound up about a player's form based on one game on a Wednesday night that's a friendly before a big league game, well then there's no real discussion to be had about that. I don't think that's it. We saw on Saturday night how different the performances were between Wednesday and Saturday.
Yeah.
You could tell one was a friendly and one was an important league game, and one was away from home and one was at our home, which is a fortress.
The Etihad, I mean, it really is ridiculous, isn't it, these days? It is an absolute fortress. Like, it's crazy. I think teams are just genuinely scared to come here now. We obviously knew that was true anyway, but it's becoming something that the wider public are catching on to as well. I hear people talking in the media about it, not just City fans. And once it becomes mainstream, I hate to admit it, but Anfield always had that for Liverpool. It did, like people get scared of the ground, and that is so crucial. That is so crucial, and that's fostered by brilliance. That's fostered by being great there, and obviously fostered by people like Pep Guardiola and the quality we've got. When you align that as well with that physical presence that City have got now, it's just... It's stupidly intimidating, and it does fulfill me with confidence. Like this season, now looking at it, I was always confident. I had us down to win the league anyway. I did. The more I've seen of these first 2 games, I am 99% certain that this second, and that sounds crazy to say that confidently, I think we're going to win the league. And it's because I look round, and obviously Arsenal, we'll see how they get on tonight. But from what I've seen elsewhere, like Liverpool, they are like, there's holes everywhere, man. They're a sieve. Like, they concede goals. United look a shambles as always. Chelsea, they are just not it at all. Spurs just haven't got the quality. Newcastle, they can't step to Man City. I don't see anything different. I just don't see Arsenal be able to step up to City still. So I'm looking around the league thinking, this is going to be ours unless something disastrous happens, which we'll get onto in a bit for what it's worth, because there is a tangent there. I just don't see how we can't run away with it. What's your assessment so far of the rivals?
I mean, I don't think... I agree with you. I don't think Liverpool are a particularly serious football team right now. I think defensively they look really like...
Yeah.
They're a strange team, because it feels like the way that he's bought players. So that the first kind of Klopp team, they played only in transitions, but they were so dangerous that it was really difficult to play against them. And then in the middle, you tried to go to more of a possession-based thing, because teams basically sat really deep against them. And you feel like with the players that they've bought, they've a little bit tried to go back to that kind of transition-y thing. Like you look at Szoboszlai and all of the new lads, and Cody Gakpo, and even Luis Diaz, and it just feels like they're a team who they just want to play in transitions, and if you give them space, they'll kill you. But at the same time, they give you... look, Bournemouth are a decent bottom half of the Premier League team.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth, really, if they'd have scored 3 goals on Saturday at Anfield, nobody would have said, oh, they didn't deserve to score those 3 goals.
Yeah.
Because the spaces were there and the chances were there. And, there was... Every time I've seen Liverpool in pre-season at the start of this season, I've seen various players just walk through the middle of their midfield. Just pick the ball up and just walk right through the middle of their midfield without being chased, and then find themselves one-on-one with Van Dijk or with Konate. So now look, they might sort their defensive solidity out, and then they've got loads of goals, and that'd be a different conversation. But for the moment, they don't look very serious. Arsenal, I don't really know. I mean, I think they're as good as they were last season, but I also don't think City are going to give them a 10-point head start. No. Last season, they basically had a 10-point head start, and it was like, go on, lads, see if you win the title from here. And they couldn't. And I don't think we're going to give them that head start this season. I think that, on the contrary, I suspect that City are going to find themselves in a spot where they will sit at the top from pretty early on. Because you look at our next 4 or 5 fixtures before Arsenal, and it's bottom half of the Premier League teams.
Yeah.
So our record there is really strong. So if you get yourself to Arsenal and you've won all your games, and then you beat Arsenal at the Emirates, do you expect? So, for example, do you expect Arsenal, United, Chelsea, Newcastle not to drop points in the next 6 games? I think they probably all will.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I mean, that I don't see City giving teams that head start that they got last season. And honestly, now if you ask me, how did they end up with that head start? I can't really even remember, because we started the season well, kind of had a little bit of a dip, and we had the World Cup break. And even going into the World Cup break, you take Brentford out of the equation, we were pretty good. You come out of the World Cup break, and we had like a hairy few weeks, but then we're off again.
They were perfect. I think mainly they were perfect, and they had like a 50-point start of the season, which it was just like
right.
It was like they were so good, and we weren't terrible, but we were just we were pretty good. But they were just perfect and fair play at the time, And I watched Arsenal's first game in the season, and they they definitely looked a little bit like, oh, so this is how it is now. There was a low block, everyone defending deep against them, and like the second season is so much harder than the first season. And I looked at once again the reaction online to a few Arsenal fans to that win against Forest. So some of them were talking about goal difference and stuff already, and I was thinking that's a fear. That's a fear of Manchester City, because I think they understand now it's all very well, coasting until New Year, in the league and whatever with no expectation on you, but it's an absolutely different kettle of fish entirely when you've got Manchester City there and you're expected to keep pace with us. I don't know yet if they're still ready for that race, for that, intensity throughout a whole season. We'll see. I don't know if they are, but I mean, the thing is, time will tell them that. But it's little things like their eagerness to find a thread of hope, in the Community Shield when they went ecstatic. I was like, I know it. Yes, they won a trophy, so fair. But I don't want to be in celebration, please. But there's an element of not desperation, but like looking for something that wasn't there from that game. And to me, that says it all, that they are acutely aware of just how difficult it's going to be this season. Rightfully so, but it didn't feel calm to me.
No, well, look, I think the thing is that City were, 8-9 points behind Arsenal, right? And we kind of had a job to do in front of us.
Yeah.
And in a way, we didn't really let the noise affect us. It was just like sort of, okay, we're 8-9 points behind. We know we've got to play them. So we need to go game by game and get to that point quietly where when we play them, we've won every game. And if we beat them, then the swing will be massive.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, if the challenger, whoever they may be, if they find themselves 8 points behind City in January, February, do they have the mentality to then go, well, we're going to have to win 10, 12 games on the bounce here? I don't know is the honest answer. I'm not sure right now that anybody is there. And look, I think every season we go into a season and you look at transfer business and there's always a kind of confidence around rivals. And there's always like that feeling of, oh, well, it's going to be really hard this year. And
yeah,
United will be really good this year. Arsenal will be really good this year. Liverpool have bought really well. Look at all the money that Chelsea have spent. All that sort of stuff. But then there's like a consistency to what City are, which isn't like, like Pep's raised the bar.
Yeah.
But he's raised the bar from a coaching point of view. It's not really a financial win anymore. This isn't really anymore a case of like, well, we've spent so much more than all of these fuckers that it makes sense that we would be miles ahead of them. On the contrary, it kind of feels like financially, everybody's had a go at catching up with us. So it's just more of a coaching thing now where there's a consistency to our team, to our performances, to our style of play, everybody's jobs. Everybody knows, right? They know what they need to do to win games. And then the problem with the rivals is the inconsistency. So Chelsea, well, new manager, it's going to take time, yeah? Man United, massively inconsistent, have been for years now, exactly the same thing that like, look good one week, look terrible the next week. But there isn't like that. I don't feel that United have taken a big step forward. In the last however many years, the only team that have taken a big step forward are Arsenal. Yeah. They did it last season for one season. They've gone out and they bought loads of players, and actually not loads, but they've spent big money on big high-profile signings. And now that has to be turned into a step forward in terms of the consistency of their performances. Because that's maybe the big thing about City has always been under Guardiola, a standard, a baseline of performances that you'll always get. Yeah. So we don't get beat by 2 or 3 goals. It never happens. You know why? Because there's a consistency of performance there. Yeah. It's very rare now that you see players and you watch a game and at the end of it you go, oh mate, he was terrible. It just doesn't happen. The system is what it is. Players know their jobs really well. The kind of professionalism of game by game, the standards that have been set at City, every documentary you watch, every interview you hear players say, if we draw a game of football, the next day at training is murder. Like, people look like something terrible has happened. And that's those are standards that have been set over a long period of years now. And I think from the rivals' point of view, I don't think anybody's like Liverpool set those standards for 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
They set themselves really high standards, but it felt a little bit like they're the most curious for me team. The Klopp Liverpool thing is probably the most curious thing because the highs were so high. Like you can't really forget how close they came 14, 15 months ago in terms of
to perfection.
We need to beat Villa on the last day. They get to the finals of all the cups and the last day in the league, and then look at the collapse last season, and then look at the kind of massive turnover in terms of a bunch of players going out, a bunch of new players coming in. I feel a little bit like they've not reshaped the squad in a way that we complain about Guardiola having a small squad, and we complain a little bit about City moving really slowly.
Yeah.
But I think there's a virtue in that insofar as you know what you're going to get from everybody involved, right?
Yeah.
And I think that what's interesting about Liverpool and Klopp is that you felt that they had those really high standards, and then last season they fell like so far short, and it wasn't like it was the same players.
Yeah.
And so, and for us, in all our time, sorry, it's a bit of a long monologue.
No, let's go for it.
In all our time, not just under Guardiola, since the takeover, right? Since we got into the Champions League, we've never not been in the Champions League, which means good season, bad season, okay season, top 4 is never a question.
Yeah.
Has never been a question. Liverpool's drop, if you look at where they were, how bad they were, how up until the last 8-9 games of the season, they were still hovering somewhere around mid-table. That's a huge drop-off for a team with Salah, Mane, blah, 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 blah. You look at all the players that they've got there.
Alisson, Van Dijk, a lot of them,
Yeah, so it just, I don't know if it's a coaching thing. I don't know if it's a Klopp thing. I don't know if it's a culture of the club thing. I don't know if it's just a cycle that's come to an end and they don't really know how to handle the end of the cycle. But they're just a very difficult team to predict. Like they just look, that's why I call them a bit unserious, because I feel like if you can I think they're a team that could beat City, one of the few teams on the planet that could beat City 3-0 at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could. We go Anfield and lose by 3 or 4 goals, and we'd all go fair enough. But at the same time, they also look like a team that could go to Bournemouth and lose by 3 goals. That's a very unserious team.
Well, it's a team that's built in its manager's image. I mean this with the greatest respect to Klopp, actually. Like, they're such an emotional, passionate side. That emotional, passionate people are erratic, They can be very erratic, and I think Liverpool are that, But going back to that point you talked about the standards earlier, the brilliance of where City are right now is that they're sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Last season, the empowerment of what happened last season for Pep Guardiola, when he quite infamously and very ruthlessly sort of cut a few players out of the team for a few months. He did, no question about it. Even Kyle Walker, who's now the club captain, was put on the bench for a 17-year-old. Cancelo shipped off without a thought, leaving us without a left back. Guardiola's willing to cut off, a limb, for one of the best players in his position in world football. And then, of course, Mahrez sort of was on the bench a little bit. Laporte, he's gone. Guardiola did that to a lot of criticism of some quarters. So people say, what's he doing? He's one of the best players. And for some of our fan base too. And he did that, and then went on to achieve immortality. Like he's his aura and his word gets stronger every single day, And he can turn around and go, "I will leave you on the bench, and I will not care." And the players will know, because they'll know someone else is going to come in and win. Like, to be able to look you in the eye and have that utter conviction, like it's insane to think he got rid of he dropped one of his best players and then won a treble. Like it's the best way to put it is the big dick energy of that. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And like, to me, that's what makes City right now so frightening, because it feels like it doesn't matter the size of the obstacle in front of us. Pep's is gonna find a way, and it feels like everyone at the club knows that. I mean, there may be a potential for a slip up here and there, but it does feel right now that City just feels sort of invincible. And the start of the season as well has sort of kind of reaffirmed that for me, because these players, there was always two sides of it. There's going to be the idea of complacency. We've reached the top, blah, blah, blah. Or I always thought the other side could be that actually these players have reached the top. They've realised they are the best. And as a result, we are that good. Yeah, we are that good. And the best players, they find empowerment from that. You look at a Rodri type. Rodri seems to have gone up again this season. Like some of the now he's walking around doing his job, but also playing passes like Pirlo. It's ridiculous. And now you see the confidence throughout the team. Like Akanji's just asked to play any role. He's like, all right, I can do that. Like we can miss a few people. All right, Foden will step up and be the superstar midfielder. There's a real belief at this team that comes from just doing what they've done. And I don't think we have the players to worry about the mentality issues, because they're all leaders. They're all natural captains. They're all warriors who first and foremost work hard, but then the talent comes after. And when you've got that, you've got absolutely no problems, especially when you sign a couple of Balkans boys as well. You know what I mean? They are steely and determined. And that.
Well, I think the thing is that, like, I think sometimes all managers, including Pep, I think you forgive dickheads because they've got talent.
Yeah.
So you look at a guy like João Cancelo, and maybe there's been points where they've gone, we're going to have to indulge him. He's a bit of a dickhead, but he's got loads of talent.
Yeah.
And I think that what the conclusion that they've come to in the last 12 months is actually it's not worth it. You're better off having the right mentality just from back to front in the squad, and anybody that wavers from the standards that you want to set, the examples that you want to set, you kind of cut their legs off, remove their power. And I think Kyle Walker's like a really interesting example.
Yeah, he's a case study, isn't he?
Really, he is, because I think that a lot of what went on around Kyle was framed as a footballing thing. But I don't think you can escape the fact that Kyle lands in the Sunday papers and loses his place a week after that, and struggles to get back in the team for the rest of the season. Now, I think there's a double-edged sword there, because obviously Kyle Walker's really important to the squad, but I think there had to be some kind of reckoning between him and Pep, because I felt, so if I feel it, I'm sure that Guardiola and the coaching staff feel it. Kyle's like 32, 33 years old, right? He's English. Somebody has to set standards for how you behave at a football club. Not just when you're at the football club, but when you've got a day off, yeah? It's not the same. Like, basically, if you've got young lads like Phil Foden or Cole Palmer or Rico Lewis coming through, who's setting the standards for them? Kyle should be setting the standards for them. And so I think that sort of public kind of bringing shame upon the club so publicly means, I think they decided, well, you know what? We're going to publicly shame you as well. And I think that's where that whole thing with Pep saying, well, no, he can't play that position. He just can't play it. Being so brutal and so dismissive. I think that really stemmed from that, in terms of, like, one, making an example of him, two, basically showing him and reminding him that I don't really care who you are or how good you are. Yeah. If you don't hold the standards, you won't be in the team. But also not being so arrogant as to completely cut off your nose to spite your face. To get to the summer, to know that Walker's unsettled, to obviously have the Bayern Munich thing, and then to be emotionally intelligent enough to go to Walker and convince him, look, you're really important. Even if you don't play every single game, you're really important. And I think that's something that I've got, like, I take tremendous issue with any player that rocks up and goes, I've got to play every game.
Yeah.
I think if you've watched Guardiola in the last 5 years at City, or in his whole career, Pep brings you success. He brings you trophies. He brings you medals. You get to play
a lot of money as well because of that as well.
It's just everything, right? The collective trumps any individual. And so for me, having those moments in a season where somebody brings a bit of dickhead energy and you just go, all right, you're not going to play. You're going to sit over there on the bench for a little while. I think it keeps everybody on their toes.
Yeah.
I think, like Rico Lewis starting the first game of the season this season just keeps everybody on their toes.
The thing
is, it's like
I honestly think Pep would never admit it publicly, but I think he sort of revels in those moments. He's so far ahead of his time.
Absolutely.
That guy's playing 5D chess, not 4D.
Of course
He will see that Walker moment. It'd be a disappointment, but deep down he'd be like, right, this is a chance for me now to make that point. And he knows he will use. He's the natural leaders, the true winners, natural leaders, the people that can inspire people to go to war. Those kind of people they will use any opportunity. They will any opportunity to make a point to get people going, and that's what he took that. He took that so blatantly. He took it as well with the happy flowers and all this kind of stuff. Like, he sat there and he worked out how to light a fire under this squad. And if it meant, as you said, sort of sacrificing the ego of a player temporarily, but very brutally and very honestly. I mean, like, once again, Rico Lewis, wonderful little player, but 17 years old. He dropped the best right back in the world for him for a long time. For a long time, and he sent that message was brutal, and it was long. And it was probably quite sobering for Kyle Walker. And it was intentional.
And Cancelo. You've got to think Cancelo.
The two best fullbacks arguably in the world.
Exactly.
They
both lost their places.
And look who we put in. 17-year-old Rico Lewis, who, by all accounts, actually I've met him personally, a wonderful lad. Like, he's teacher's pet level lad. He's like Guardiola molded a player in his image. In terms of his attitude, his focus. And who else came in? Nathan Ake. An older Rico Lewis. Essentially their attitude is full on Apple at the desk, teacher's pet level stuff, which is exactly what you want from subservient but hardworking and focused and talented. And I think every now and then adversity. They can become happy flowers. They can be sort of numb and just float along. And I think you do need a little bit of fire. You do need someone just to challenge you every now and then, even if it can be sort of a negative. Pep is the best in the world at turning a negative into a positive and just working out how to get through to it. But we chatted about the start of the season for a while here, man, and I think it's all very pertinent. But let's go on to the potential issues in this squad, because if there's one thing that could derail it to start of the season, it could literally just be numbers. It could be numbers. And it's the issue around the narrative, once again, around the squad at the moment is about this squad depth and so on. And a couple of super chats, by the way, I will just run over them quickly because they've been waiting for a while. Darcy said, saw the Verts links yesterday. Do you know anything more about that? Cheers, bro. I don't personally know anything more about that. I don't think that's going to happen. Do you, Ahsan? I'm sorry, mate. It says apparently the rumours today was that you need a massive stupid bid. City aren't going to do a massive stupid bid. You're probably talking 120 million or something like that. I would love to say that was true, Darcy, but unfortunately, mate, I don't. I got excited when I saw that, but I just don't see it happening. That feels like the one that they planned for a year. If it's going to happen, they'll do that. They'll use a season to plan for that for next summer. And another one from MCFC says, hi, Steve and Ahsan. Verts and almost seem impossible. Any chance Piketty gets cleared this week so we can go back for him? Mate, that's illegal proceedings, unfortunately, pal. That's criminal stuff. So City aren't going near him until everything.
Smelly.
The court system in the UK as well, mate. That's going to be
the FA doing anything quickly. Never going to happen.
They don't even have to like a brew quickly, probably. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So how do you feel now, given the context of everything, with this issue, with the squad depth and the bench and the injuries and the transfers? Where's your head at this morning on the 21st of August, 2023?
I think they've had a bad summer. I don't think there's another way to characterize it. I think it's been a really bad summer from a transfer point of view. I think that City like to plan almost like a year in advance, right? And I think that for a lot of years, we've been quite lucky in that we've had a kind of, I don't want to say like a dominance in the transfer market, because it's not like we're like big transfer kings or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think that we found it very easy to navigate summer windows for various reasons. But I think that some things have changed quite dramatically in the last 14 months. And I think the two biggest are Chelsea, right? And the level at which actually I'm going to go with a general thing. So I think that in the Premier League, what we would consider to be our rivals, whereas a couple of years ago you felt like, well, United are the only club that will really go and spend big dough. Now it's like Arsenal will spend big dough, Chelsea will spend big dough. So therefore, the market's hot. Whatever player you go for, the fees are up, they're big. And I think the other thing is the Saudi thing.
Yeah.
Because with the thing with the Saudi thing is that for me, it's not really about an inflationary effect. It's about a level of control over your squad Truth is that when Riyad Mahrez walked in the door and went, I want to go, they had no choice but to let him go because, well, I mean, obviously you always have a choice if you've got a player under contract.
Yeah.
But if you want to run your dressing room properly, and if a lad comes in and goes, this is a life-changing offer, you benched me for every big game last season, just tell me how much I've got to bring because I want to go, well, you're no longer in control of that situation. So I think that City weren't really prepared for those things, and we're not very good at being reactive, just to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
I think that we have an obsession with not being seen to overpay, which fine, that's their business model. Doesn't matter whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it. But the truth is that in a market that's hot, if you want to be seen to not be overpaying, you're going to struggle to sign players, which is basically what's happened to us. The 2 transfers that we got through the door are transfers that we started in January. If you go back to when, realistically, if you go back to when it became serious with Vardiol and Kovacic, I think it's like first week of February, stories dropped, like Vardiol, City close, Kovacic, City are hot on Kovacic. So we did those long in advance. And you still see how difficult Vardiol was. And you see that Kovacic was easy because of Chelsea's need to sell players. But after that, we haven't been able to do anything. And we've needed players. It's not that we don't need players. The squad is 2 to 3 players light. Yeah. And that's not me saying it. That's coming straight out of the coach's room. Yeah. Straight out the coach's room. They're going.
He said it in the press conference. He basically said we're short. He said we're short. He said there's a lot of young players on the bench.
Yeah.
He said we're going to have trouble as well. He said at some point where it's going to be. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he said it in no uncertain terms. We are short and we have problems. And
the problem we've got is we can't absorb injuries right now. Or actually, let me rephrase that. We can absorb defensive injuries because we've got defensively we've got a lot of players. We can't absorb injuries anywhere else. No. So one injury to Kevin De Bruyne, and actually. You look at that bench the other day, it's just the kid. It's just the kids. So that means that you lose one more player to injury, and not only have you got nothing on the bench, one of the kids
we've lost one more today. Peroni's gone. He was on the bench. Peroni's going to Las Palmas. It's like basically agreed.
Oh, has that been agreed?
That was going around. It's sort of done, overnight. So that's happening, and so we're already down another player. And like that, I literally don't even know who the next on the bench is at that point. I don't know, because I know we've got talented young players, but none of them have been. They haven't been near the first team yet. So there's a bunch of under 18s in EDS who just don't have that. They haven't been on the bench yet, so it's going to be a new name, like in terms of a youth player, and Pep isn't one for bringing on players.
Isn't Howard Bellis still at the club?
Yeah, he is. I mean, so is Tommy Doyle for what it's worth. I mean, it should be.
There you go. Those two are the next kids to come up, because until they get moves, they are proven at a level, and they played professional man's football. So Doyle
really in particular, we could do with him right now. Exactly. Yeah, no, he's a promotion-winning championship player and a City fan, and like that. So there's something to be said for that. Like you feel like he should be on the bench at very least right now, especially if Peroni's moving on. Because we're gonna literally need numbers. I think Bernardo should be back for the next game, but like that bench, The thing is, for me, it feels like every October and November we get to a spell where we're down to 13, 14 players anyway. It happens all the time. You see a couple of senior players on because John Stones gets his usual, I've pulled McCarthy out for 2 weeks. De Bruyne, someone will get a knock, someone will get suspended, and you go, oh God, what happened there? And all of a sudden you go, oh, someone's got a cold because it's winter. Someone always gets a cold and they're off for 2 weeks. Like this is how it is these days. Players get ill as well because they're human. And then all of a sudden you've got like 13, 40 players. Now we're already at that stage, and it's the second game of the season. Are we going to literally have at some point where we're having to start? And I don't mean to. It's not a panic, but are we going to have where we're going to have no senior players? Calvin Phillips has got to start, and that feels awful to say, but Pep might have no choice but to actually play him. And then we've got on the bench Darda Mascal from the EDS, who no one's ever even heard of, and then we've got Galvez, all these under 18s players, and that look, I don't mind youth players being used. But we need to know who we are here. We're treble winners, and we're looking for immortality to win 4 leagues in a row. And it just feels a little bit shooting yourself in the head to not solve that problem if you can do. And I don't want us to sign anyone for the sake of it, but I do think senior players who know how to play at a certain level, there's something to be said for an Akanji type signing, someone who just
Yeah, but it's not that easy.
I know it's not that easy. I know it isn't, but
it's just not that easy. Like Calvin Phillips is the other side of the Akanji coin, right? That you can take a little bit of a risk on a player, go on in that middle level, and look, when it doesn't work, it really, really doesn't work. And I almost feel as though I'm loath to. I had a point where I thought they were just going to not buy anybody, right? And at that point, I was like properly angry because I was just like, you can't win the treble and then like allow yourself to be allow your squad to be gutted in the way that it has been, and not to add to it, knowing that they're going to do their level best to get 2 or 3 players in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to wait until the 1st of September before I make a big call on how the window's gone. So far, it's been bad, but I also think that there's a real sense amongst people close to Pep that there's the players whose names we know, and then there's the players whose names we don't know. And I think part of not the issue, but part of what City are dealing with is probably there's players who they want to get where they don't want the names out there right now.
Yeah.
It's going to complicate the negotiation. And so there's a super limited amount of information that is available to us. And we're trying to navigate that limited amount of information and panicking based on what we do or don't read. Because, for example, Danny Olmo, like, with the best will in the world, if you follow football, you've seen how many players Leipzig have sold this summer. They're not going to sell Olmo. Like, it would take...
It would
genuinely... Yeah, like, it would just take something daft and the player to go on strike, yeah?
Yeah.
And on the contrary, obviously, he's come out after the game and immediately killed it dead and gone, I'm not going anywhere. So I think that it's difficult not to react to stuff like that, but we just have to sit tight for a minute because they're trying.
Go on, sorry, mate.
Whatever comes of it, at least they're having a go at it. And then we'll see on the 1st of September where they land. Like, I don't think... I've seen a few people say Pep doesn't look happy. And it's like, well, it depends upon how you want to kind of look at that. He's a bit rattled because he's lost arguably his best player for 5 months, right? The fella who brought all the assists last season, he's lost him for 5 months. You can't not be affected by that. Stones is now out until after the international break. So that's 2 huge players.
Yeah.
Massive influence, right? Huge influence to everything good that we did last season that are out for a period of time. And so there's going to be obviously he's going to have a feel and effect from that. They were obviously trying to sign Paquetá, and then this betting thing has come out. You can't control that.
No, that's
crazy.
What I mean?
Like, you can't do anything about that. Nobody can do anything about that.
And that was done.
All of those things.
Apparently, that was basically done, wasn't it? So we had our midfielder there. It looks like they agreed around 80 million, and then and then someone made a Paquetá and something else instead. Unfortunately, that's not City's fault. That's a weird, and I think for what it's worth, I think it would have been a good signing. It's just it's a strange market, and it's weird because it's one of those things where they've earned the chance to to sort it out. They've earned the chance. They know more about their jobs than anything we could even possibly imagine. They are treble winning board as well at the same time. They give them the tools, but they are human. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that they wouldn't have planned for this. This doesn't feel optimal. We can all admit that. You know what I mean? It's it's not. It's
if I want to be critical, it's dead easy, right? I'll just go. How can you say that you've got more scouts than everybody else? That you've got the most efficient transfer department in the world?
The
CFG, got 5 targets for every position in any given moment, and then one winger leaves that you didn't expect, and you don't know what to do. And it's the end of August, and you start there trying to sign some lad from Rennes. And how can you not close a deal with Rennes?
Well, on that,
your City in there, Rennes.
On that, apparently that's going to happen. There's some bit of breaking news that he's this morning.
He was again. If I'm going to be critical, I can just dead easily go. He was there 4 weeks ago when you knew Riyadh was leaving? Why are you waiting until
Yeah.
the 21st of August to tell me that, oh, this week it'll happen?
You're right. You're absolutely
What are
right.
you
I mean,
doing?
I think it's pretty really obvious it's going to be around a 50 million player, given these days, given everything, and it's going to happen for what it's worth. It's apparently breaking news is that he's told Rennie wants to join City, and the package will be around 55 million euros going to Fabrizio Romano. That's going to happen, but I do agree. Like,
Yeah, but I don't want to hear about that anymore. Like all of this Fabrizio Romano, there's a verbal offer that he's I don't give a shit about
get it
any
done,
of that, mate.
basically.
Get it done, yeah.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Football games are happening right now.
And once
players
again,
are injured right now.
and there's 9 days until the window shuts. What if it turns out that Doku snaps his leg tomorrow? I hope he doesn't. That'd be awful.
Right.
But what if the longer you go on, the more likely something is to go wrong, and like anything that can happen will happen. That's how football is.
The longer you wait, the more time Pep's got to wait before he can put that player in the team.
Exactly.
Especially a young player, it'll take him time to adapt to everything.
I don't know if you're like me this way, but I sort of trust more or less. I mean, there's obviously not every player's going to be a hit. It's not possible for that to be. But my general view is if they want a player, I sort of trust that the player's got talent and probably could be good enough. So I don't really care to an extent, unless it's someone I'm really against. I don't really care who it is. Really, if they've identified someone, just get them in. Paqueta, Olmo, Doku, whatever. Like, I know we could always point to Phillips, but that feels like a weird anomaly, which is a discussion for itself, the Calvin Phillips phenomenon, because it's very rare you get a player of that value and that perceived quality beforehand. Like, I'm not saying he was world class, but he was still perceived as a good player. You know, Premier League level. This is a strange one. Whatever's happened there, it's gone weird. So you have to remove him as a sort of anomaly because he's not the rule there. The rule is usually anyone who comes to City is proven to be a very good player and time adapts, and Guardiola makes use of them to certain levels and degrees, you know. Unless they're like a cheap punt, like a Sergio Gomez, where they come in, look at what they are, you know, a cheap punt. But I trust whoever they want, basically. So I'm not even being fussy. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, you're going for Olmo. I want Wirtz instead. Oh, you're going for Wirtz. Actually, I want Barella. I don't sort of care, really. I just really trust that Guardiola, if you give him talented footballers, he just needs the numbers. He just needs the options. He just needs the time on the training pitch, which once again goes back to the point. Get it done. Just give him those numbers. Yeah. Let him plan for the squad. Let him assess him in training so he knows. What if he gets him in? What if he got him in 3 weeks ago? And he might have looked and gone, this guy's really good, by the way, but I'm going to need this as well. And you've got time to fix it there. But he's not going to have time to assess the whole picture because the time he's done, it's going to be the 29th of August when it gets done. We know. We're not stupid.
I think they're... Yeah, I think they know. Like, I trust that relationship between Guardiola and Begiristain and SDRA and the kind of all the football, the way that they've got their setup there, they know what they need, right? I trust them to kind of have a pretty clear picture of where you need experience, where you need youth, whether you know what I mean? Like I'm not the identification of where the holes are. I kind of trust them to get that side of it right. I think this summer has been a perfect storm in terms of because the way City kind of move in the shadows, that they're the literal opposite of almost every other football club out there. Most big clubs, they'll tell everybody who writes for them off the record who they want to sign because they want the supporters to know because they want to keep that, they want to keep everybody on side. City don't care about the media and don't care about the supporters' feelings when it comes to transfers.
Yeah.
All they're interested in, they're running a business. So the way they look at it is, I'm not going to potentially up the fee by 5 million by talking loudly about it. On the contrary, we want to do all our business in the shadows. But when you do that, and then you don't get your business done early, you create a vacuum that is allowed to be filled by fellas like Fabrizio Romano. And you get your name dragged into transfers that are obviously not going to happen. And because you don't talk, you don't tell people they're not going to happen. So you have this kind of weird emotional roller coaster where it's like, Donny Olmo, oh no, he's not coming because he's not available. Well, why didn't somebody say the moment that name broke, we're not in for him, lads, he's not available this summer because we don't talk. City don't talk. So that void and that vacuum is just filled with too much speculation, which is why right now, like I've got WhatsApp chat groups, right, where like somebody will send me like, he said, I'm not bothered about anything other than when it says a fee has been agreed, rock and roll, then we can talk, yeah?
Yeah.
But until a fee has been agreed, I don't care about personal terms. I don't care about preparing a bid. I don't care about preparing to prepare to make a bid.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
I don't care about verbal offers and we need to get our business done. And we need to be in a position where I look at it like this now. Nobody that's coming in is going to be ready before the international break to play football. But you better be damn sure that you get enough time and space here so that when the international break is done, they're ready to play.
I absolutely agree, mate. I actually I remember you tweeting, I think it was yesterday or something like that, where it feels like we have to take our medicine this summer. Do you feel like looking this morning? Do you still feel like do you feel?
Nah, because I got a DM like straight after. I got a message like right after I tweeted that, going, no. Like they're going to bring 2 or 3 players in. They're
Okay.
really. It's not a case of they've given up. On the contrary, it's a case of they have a very busy between now and the end of the window, because it's not 1 or 2, it's 2 or 3, and it's not like, oh, if we can. It's like they're actively pursuing 2 or 3 players. So
it's such a mystery. It's so exciting. I
love that.
Yeah, I love it. I love the mystery of it, because I've been on record many times saying I really like it when players leave and new players come in. I know that's the antithesis of football, but I see football to me is, once again, it's the most beloved entertainment thing in the world for me. I love football. I love the narrative of football. I love watching Kovacic come in as this 30 million cast off from Chelsea, then look incredible. I love this. I love everything about it. That gets me going just as much as a Haaland transfer, because there's something beautiful about watching these new narratives unfold and these new wonderful players become so, like, I love that. Kovacic meant nothing to me a month ago. Now I love him. Like, all of a sudden, this player's come out of nowhere, and I'm obsessed with him. And there's something brilliant about that, because it shows the inherent power of football to get you going and feeling something. And as much as you feel like
business,
as much as you feel like you've seen it all, you haven't, and that's why I don't mind Mahrez and Gundogan leaving. And as much, I kind of got used to it a long time ago, when every year we started to lose a big player. But because I think we've seen time and time again that. Guess what follows? Another player who's going to be brilliant. It always happens. It may take a bit of time, but it always happens. And it's weird, because I do feel like every now and then we get ourselves into a little bit of a hole, and it can be frustrating, but we eventually get it right. And it's okay to fail every now and then. Like, we built this mentality of, I'm not saying we should accept failure. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, you're going to occasionally not get the target that you want. That's just life. The point is, can you react eventually? Will you get the player in? And will you, do you have the right attitude to do it? And I feel like look, if you miss out on Bellingham and Rice or whatever, okay, annoying, but it happens. Paqueta is a freakish moment. It happens. But if the intentions are there, and eventually they'll get someone in, and they explain it to Pep, and if the football remains good, which it will do, and they actually be good, like, come on, we'll be all right. There's an element of, like, just enjoy what we... I don't want to sound a happy clapper, but I know what I feel like. I feel like we've seen too much.
Hang on. So I agree with you up to a point, but I think there's something that I've said a few times in the last few weeks. We've had our expectations slowly lowered.
Yeah, that's true.
About what constitutes a competitive squad, and we're now walking a really thin line between a small squad and an unsustainably small squad.
Yeah.
If you want to challenge. And I think that's where there is a little bit of angst, and I think that's where it is fair enough to begin to ask questions. We all love player turnover. We all love the idea that we're going to get new players in, but
that's at least happening.
Yeah, it has to happen. And also, like, if net every year you're 1 player down, I agree. Eventually, that's too many players down. Do you know what I mean? Like, eventually, your squad is just too small, and you're just putting too much pressure. Like, for example, could be a whole other video. What the hell are they going to do with Rodri? Like, Rodri cannot physically play the number of games he played last season. No. You're seeing him already. The season has just begun. His legs are falling off an hour, 70 minutes into a game.
He was knackered.
His legs are falling off. He's knackered. How are you going to manage that? You can't just say, well, Calvin Phillips doesn't want to leave, and we made a mistake and we gave him a contract, and we like to have a small squad, so we're not going to do anything. You have to do something about that.
Well, the solution is to buy someone else then, and if he wants to sit around and not play, so be it. But they have to take the medicine. Like they can't be. Well, we've got Calvin Phillips. Well, you're not going to use him. You haven't got him. You can't have the cake and eat it in that instance. So just buy a replacement and let him sit on the bench if he wants to.
We've had this thing with Pep all the way through, actually, where you get to February, March, and you go, right, there's 5 lads that he doesn't trust, because any important game, those 5 lads are not getting anywhere near the team, and it tends to fluctuate who those 5 lads are. But that trust thing, fundamentally, if you're going to carry a really small squad, Guardiola's got to trust every one of those players. And right now, my biggest fear is that we got a tiny squad and lads he doesn't trust, and that's like asking for trouble. I mean, I'm looking at Phillips didn't get on the pitch in the Super Cup, man. Like
he's not a minute this season, not a single minute.
My head is falling off my shoulders when it comes to that fella, because even if I want to get behind him and go, we got to give him a chance, he's not getting a chance. He's not even getting on the pitch.
It's irrelevant what we think. It's irrelevant what we think. Yeah, it's like anyone who can't see it yet, they are pulling wool over their eyes, because, and I for a while thought, you know what, maybe the second season will be better, but it's undeniable at this point. He's been treated in the way that Sergio Gomez has been treated. Like, he's a 3-0 up player, and that's wild, and that's how he's been. But not a single minute.
He's not even a 3-0 up player. He's not even a 3-0 up player.
Pep is absolutely making a.
He's an injury time player. He's just an injury time player. And, something that we have to kind of accept, right, is that playing football for Man City is the pinnacle. Yeah. So when players come here, it's always going to be hard to get them to leave, because who wants to leave City? Look at Phillips. Medals are piling up, bro. Why is he going to actively go, all right, I'm out of here? You to a greater or a lesser extent, if you're not prepared to be ruthless with a player and go, you won't get a squad number, you won't get registered in the Champions League squad, you need to leave. If you're not prepared to be ruthless like that, you have to accept that when you make transfer mistakes, you're going to be stuck with those players, because nobody wants to leave City.
I agree, and I feel like it's worth saying as well, like, this isn't a pylon on Phillips at any point whatsoever. That man has every single right to be, like, it has every single right to be there if he wants to. If they don't think he's good enough, that's Manchester City's fault. He, by all accounts, he seems like a lovely lad. He seems very professional, very popular. I'm sure he works hard in training. But if City don't think he's good enough and Pep doesn't play him, that is City's mistake to swallow. And the options are, one, you either go cold, cruel, and kick him out. They're not going to do that because it doesn't fit the modus operandi at Man City. Fine. The other option is then, will you replace him and let him sit on the bench and watch, learn, or be happy with his medals? Whatever it is, there's 2 options. We don't seem willing to do either of them at the moment, and that is, it's just like, we have to be ruthless in one way or another. Don't play him because someone else is in his position, because you've bought, I don't know, Lavia back or whatever, or get rid of him. Like, you can't just go, like, I feel like this is pure. No, I don't want to speculate, but I'm always saying, like, sometimes you wonder, do Cheeky and Pep see it differently? Cheeky's like, well, you've got him. He's like, well, I've got him. Like, do you wonder if, like, someone thinks you've got? No, maybe not. They'll be on the same page.
I just think it's very complicated.
Yeah,
a year into somebody's career after you've signed them for relatively big money and given them the biggest contract of their life, to then go, actually, we don't rate you, lad. Even though you've just done a treble and you've got all the medals, we don't rate you. I think to do that, City are one of the reasons players love to play for Man City, and in the football industry, forget about the reputation out front, but in the football industry, everybody knows City is one of the best clubs on the planet to come and play for. Professionally run, professional people, respectful people, family environment, just it ticks every single box.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that environment means that it's hard. Players only leave when the egos get really big and the issue is not playing. Mahrez, it's like, I've won it all, bro, and you don't trust me anymore? Fine, I'm out of it. Gundo, I've won it all. I'm all right. I can go.
Yeah.
But the younger down you go, Zinchenko, he didn't want to leave for years. Sergio Gomez, he ain't gonna go anywhere until they literally go, lad, you need to go.
Yeah.
Because why would he go? Why would he leave? Having a great time.
And once again, I don't sort of have a problem with that. I mean, Zinchenko, unfortunately, is a rod for their own back in that front. Like he hung around, and his proof was now he's an elite level footballer, and fair play to him, you know. And, but the issue is, like, if they are seen as part of the squad, then but they're not usable. So once again, all right, just have a bigger squad, have 2 more players that allow for them to be there, and then it's City's problem. I think you have to accept, you know, swallow your medicine on that. Really, it is what it is. We'll know more. Ultimately, you know, it's weird to have all this chat and still feel confident. This is where my head's at. You know, I think the bigger picture once again is City are brilliant. You know, like we are brilliant. But as you're right, the squad is too small. It's September the 1st. Where do you think we're at? Do you think we signed a couple of players? Are you
I think
confident?
2. I think they'll end up doing 2 players in the next couple of weeks, and I think that one of them will be one where it'll be a bit like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it'll be like a massive thing. I'm not saying that like we're going to go and sign Valverde for 100 million euros or something like that.
A name
I just mean that it'll just be a player or a name that it'll be one of those where Ornstein will tweet, City have agreed a fee for this player, and everybody will
Nico
go,
Barella
what?
for 80 million quid or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. Like it really will be.
Like
something
Bernardo
like that,
transfer,
so.
like that kind of thing, where it's just sort of out of nowhere years ago.
Exactly.
And I think it will be a level player like that. I don't think it's going to be some nobody. I think it will be something like a Barella or something like that, or like an £80 million signing just done because we've got the money. That the only good thing about the Paqueta, Rice, and Bellingham thing is we've established City will pay big money for the right player. You know, we are going to pay around £80 million for a midfielder. Like,
that's a little bit why they're. That's why after Bellingham and Rice, they waited so long on the Paquetá thing, is because I think they're really conscious of what people are going to ask when they go to try and sign players. But that's what I mean. That the market is the market. Stefan said to me, and he's right, because I was like, oh, maybe they'll wait a year because they feel like the market will be less hot next summer. And Stefan was just immediately like, why will it be less hot next summer? Saudi aren't going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody seems to have reached a point where they've decided we're going to spend. When Arsenal are dropping 100 million, when Chelsea are doing what they've done, even Liverpool, if you look at how quickly Szoboszlai was a release clause. McAllister was a release clause.
Yeah.
Those are expensive deals by the virtue of the fact that you've got to pay all the money up front. If everybody's prepared to pay dough coming out of the blocks, it's going to be really hard to get good deals. The market is the market.
Indeed. Ahsan, you're a superstar, mate. I've enjoyed that. An hour's absolutely flown by.
Flown by.
Yeah,
wow,
it really has, man. I'm going to go and be a good husband and spend my wedding anniversary with my wife. So I guarantee you. By the way, if everyone wants to know when something's going to happen, it'll be today because I'm going to Blue Planet Aquarium with Top Center. So I've been so on it with the videos recently, but I know I'm going out to Blue Planet Aquarium today. There'll be no signal. I'll be looking at a clownfish, and then someone will sign out of nowhere. It's guaranteed. Guys, of course, check out the 9320 podcast, 9320.com. The link's in the description as well. Ahsan, of course, an absolute superstar. And if you want more impassioned rants and basically keeping it very real, that's what 9320 is to me. It's that. It keeps it very real. Guys, go and check it out. I love you all loads. Ahsan, thank you very much, my friend.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Guys, like, subscribe, give this video a like. So many people watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll catch you tomorrow for another video. And go watch the 5 things learned from yesterday as well if you want more Man City chat. And tomorrow there should be a new episode of The Rivals. I think Joe, hopefully from Football Daily, is coming on as well. So it should be good fun. Right, guys, in a bit. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day.